There we go. Hi, my name is Beth Cotton, and I'm an AARP volunteer, and I'm your host for tonight's presentation. We are doing Intro to Concord's Trail System with Beth Fenstermacher, Assistant City Planner for the City of Concord, New Hampshire, and also Mel Karen. And I am letting you know that, as you just heard, the event will be recorded tonight. And working with me is Mary Rover. She is another AARP New Hampshire volunteer. She's going to be helping with the registration, as you have noticed, in asking for your name so we can just keep track of everyone who's here. And we will both be monitoring the chat box throughout the presentation and raising your concerns and comments as we go. Before we get started, we're going to cover just a little bit of housekeeping. Please be sure that your microphone is muted, and that is when it has that little red line through it. This is going to help us eliminate some of that background noise, the dogs barking, the noisy truck going by, and all that sort of stuff. But we also would love to hear from you today. So if you want to ask a question or you have a comment, please use the chat box, which can be accessed by clicking that chat button at the bottom of most of your screens. At AARP New Hampshire, we're focused on the health, financial security, and social connections critical to the well-being of the 50+ Granite Staters. We carry out our work through targeted advocacy at the state and federal levels, compelling engagement of the 50+ communities statewide, and serve as a trusted resource for information for our members and the public. About 45 million Americans are 65 or older. By 2030, that number is going to reach 73 million Americans. At that point, fully 1 in 5 Americans will be over 65. By 2034, the United States will be, for the first time ever, a country that's comprised of more older adults than of children. AARP supports the efforts of neighborhoods, towns, cities, and rural areas to be great places for people of all ages. We believe that communities should provide safe, walkable streets, age-friendly housing and transportation, access to needed services, and opportunities for residents of all ages to participate in their community life. As the Assistant City Planner for the City of Concord, Beth reviews development within the City of Concord. She also staffs the Conservation Commission and oversees the management of Concord's trail system with the Trails Subcommittee. She has been trained with Leave No Trace, an organization for the ethical use of the outdoors, and is an avid user of our trails. So Beth and Mel, thank you both for joining us tonight and for giving us the virtual tour of some of the trails and some helpful tips for walking those trails. Take it away, Mel and Beth.
Great, thanks so much, Bev. Mel, if you want to go to the next slide.
That is not switching. One moment.
Okay.
There we go.
Great, thanks. Welcome everybody. We're excited to have you here tonight. So the goal of tonight is to get you familiar with our trail system, just so you have a little more knowledge going out there, talk about some benefits of being out in nature and why you should get out on the trails, how to do it safely and responsibly, learn more about our trail guide and how to access information on the trail maps, and then take you on a digital tour of the trails so you know what to expect if you haven't been out there yet. Our goal is just to make you more comfortable and get you excited to get out on the trails. Next slide. So the City of Concord has over 80 miles of trails, and that's growing. I think actually now we have almost 85 miles of trails. We have a very dedicated group of volunteers, our trail subcommittee, that has worked. Some members have been included in the past 30 years, but all the trails have been developed over the past 30 years. Some original members and then some new members that have been coming in. And Their goal is to create a great trail system for everybody to use, create connections so every neighborhood has access to a trail. So these are things that we're working on in the future to get more trails out there that are more accessible for people to use. The trails are mostly built and maintained by volunteers, and it's supported by the Conservation Commission through forestry funds. So anything that's happening on the trails, if you see building a new bridge, a new plank walk, new signs, that is all paid for when the city does timber sales. So it doesn't come from the taxpayer dollars. We pride ourselves in the diversity of the trails that we have out there. We have varied terrain, some rocky, some hilly, some beautiful views. If you go, you'll see later in the digital tour, some great viewscapes that you can get on the trails, but also some flat ones, especially the ones along the river. So you can have an easier walk along the river if you're not comfortable with those rocky terrains. Go to the next slide. So this here is a map of Concord, and all those squiggly lines, those are the trails. So you can see they're pretty well distributed throughout the city. So there's a lot of options for you. You could, spend a whole year trying to get to all the trails. So there's a lot of options out there for you. So when the trails kind of were a hidden secret for a little while, and then COVID pandemic hit and everybody was at home and could not travel, and we're looking for things to do close to home. So we had a lot of trail use. People really learned what the trail system is and really loved it. Sometimes started loving it to death. We had some user conflicts, some neighbor issues. So the city recognized that we really needed a full staff member that could be dedicated. As mentioned, I'm the assistant city planner. I have a lot of other duties and relied on volunteers to do a lot of the work, but I really wanted a staff person there to have some presence on the trails, just so we could make sure that everybody was happy and it was a safe experience for everyone. So with that, I will introduce you to Ranger Mel Karen. She joined us back in October, and probably haven't seen her too much out in the trails because of the winter, but as the weather is changing, she's going to be out there more often, and she's learning about the trails. So she's going to take over the presentation from here and talk to you about some of the other things that you can glean from the trails and feel safer out there.
Great. Thank you, Beth. Thank you for getting us started. And hello, everyone. I'm excited to jump in and tell you everything you need to know to enjoy the trails this season. So to start, Concord's trails are used during all 4 seasons by the community for a variety of activities. When you're out on the trails, you might encounter other hikers, groups doing guided hikes, snowshoers in the winter, and cross-country skiers, as well as mountain bikers and horseback riders on some of the trails. So we all know the movement is good for our health, but specifically being out in nature has some added benefits of lowering blood pressure, cortisol, and enhancing our immune function. It also has the positive effect on our mental health by improving our mental performance and creativity. When compared to walking in an urban setting, walking in nature surrounded by the trees and other plants in the forest, those benefits are even stronger. There's a practice known as forest bathing that originated in Japan as a way to address stress. And the whole concept of forest bathing is to spend time immersed by the trees in nature and to take it in with all of your senses. So they found that trees release certain organic compounds that when we breathe them in and interact with them, it relaxes our nervous system. So evergreen trees in particular have a lot of those compounds in them, which is lucky for us here in Concord. We have a ton of pine trees in our forests. So if you're ready to head out to the trails, thinking about what to bring. First and foremost, you'll want sturdy shoes, sturdy footwear. Some of the trails are rocky, and you can definitely expect tree roots and other things in the forest to come up. Second would be wearing layers of clothing, bringing water and a snack for later, and bug and tick spray now that it's starting to warm up. So sadly, it is tick season, but there are measures we can take to prevent them from getting onto us. So first, they make a tick spray, which is similar to a bug spray. There's also an insecticide called permethrin that you can use to pre-treat your clothing prior to going out, and that will help keep them off. Wearing light colored clothing helps you to see ticks before they get on, and wearing tall socks and tucking your pant legs into them can help so that they don't get onto your skin. But as you're walking the trails, walk in the center of the trail to avoid brushing up on the tall grass along the edges where ticks like to hang out. And then at the end of your walk, you'll want to do a full body check before you get into the car. I like to carry a lint roller with me, so you can just roll the ticks off, and kind of helps for if you can't see like the back of your legs or whatnot. So keep one of those in your car. And then when you get home, toss your clothes in the dryer, and that will help to dehydrate any ticks that are remaining on your clothes and get rid of them. All right, so the City of Concord partners with the organization Leave No Trace, and they have set forth 7 principles to help guide trail users on how to be proper stewards of the trails. So the first one is to plan ahead and prepare. And that would involve checking the weather before you head out, and taking a look at the trail map before you go out into the woods, so you know where you're going and what to expect. The second is to travel on durable surfaces. Concord's trails have been thoughtfully planned out, so to avoid areas of concern, maybe like vernal pools or nesting sites. So as long as you're staying on the marked trail, you'll avoid those areas. Number 3 is dispose of waste properly. All of our trails are carry in, carry out. That includes all trash and dog waste and food waste. Even if it's biodegradable like fruit peels, that still counts as litter. Number 4 is to leave what you find and not to disturb plants and wildlife. Number 5 is respect wildlife. It's okay to observe wildlife from a distance, but we don't want to approach or ever attempt to feed wildlife. Number 6 is to be considerate of other visitors. And lastly, number 7 is to respect private property that surrounds the trails. So Concord's trails cross a range of both public and private properties where we have agreements that allow us to have the trail on that property. So we can respect those neighbors by staying on the marked trail. The city's trails are very well marked with signage and trail markers, which we call blazes. So the color of the blaze will correspond with the color on the trail map, so you always can figure out where you are. Blazes are about 50 feet apart, so if you're standing next to one, you can see one in the distance or there shortly after. And some loop trails share blazes, or share a portion of the trail. So if you can see this image here with the blue on top and orange on bottom, that'll tell you that the one on top is the trail that you're heading towards. And then the one on bottom is the one you're coming from. And then in this last image here, the 3 dots on the tree, that tells you that that is a boundary line. So that is not a trail marker, but you may see them from the trail, but that is just telling you that that is the boundary line. So you don't want to follow that one. All right. If you notice a trail that doesn't have blazes or signs indicating where you are, you might have come across a rogue trail. So rogue trails are built by individuals without permission and without planning ahead of time. So they make it difficult to navigate if they're created in an existing trail system. Oftentimes they are a lot less obvious than the main trail, but as you can see in this image, this one looks like an established trail. So rogue trail building makes it confusing, and it also erodes trust with property owners and is damaging to the ecosystem that surrounds it. So as long as you stay on the marked trail and you're paying attention to the blazes, you should be just fine. All right. There are a handful of things that are prohibited on city lands, and those include motorized wheeled vehicles, camping, fires, and littering, which includes picking up after pets. So the trails are a great place to bring your dogs for exercise, but Concord's trails are dog friendly with the exception of one trail at the Audubon Center. And if you bring your pets with you, please always be courteous to other trail users and make sure that dogs are well behaved. Many adults and kids and other dogs have fear of dogs, especially off leash. So if you do bring your dog, please leash them whenever you pass other trail users, and they should only be off leash if they have excellent recall and are not going to approach other trail users unless welcomed to. Trail conflicts often arise if off-leash dogs approach other users, even if they are friendly. Some people they really don't want dogs approaching them. And if dogs are off leash, they should be in your sight at all times. That also helps to prevent them from chasing wildlife or digging and harming the surrounding ecosystem, especially now that it's spring. The ground is starting to thaw and there's a bunch of interesting smells out there for dogs to get lost on and wander. So in spring, it's best to keep dogs on leash, but if they are well behaved and controlled responsibly, they are allowed off leash. With spring also comes the wet, muddy season. So at this time of year, we remind folks to walk through the mud, not around it. When you walk around the mud, it widens the trail and can erode it, which leads to costly repairs later on in the season. If you're noticing that it's particularly muddy and it's extending beyond more isolated patches, it's best to turn around and to try out a different trail for that day. So as we mentioned earlier, the trails are multi-use. So there are different activities going on, which does include hunting. So it's good to be aware of when the hunting seasons begin. Typically that is September and goes through to January, but our website is updated seasonally with the specific hunting dates each year. And during that time, you'll want to make sure to wear bright colored clothing out on the trails. And if you have a dog with you, they should also be wearing something brightly colored, and it's best to keep them on leash during hunting season. If the idea of hiking during hunting season makes you uneasy at all, there are a handful of trails that prohibit hunting, and that includes Kentucky River Park, Spears Park, Windup Park, the Audubon Center, the Swope Park, and the Connector Trail to Windup Park. All right, now we're off into the fun part. There are detailed maps for each trail location on our website. You can print them off from the website and bring them with you, or you can purchase booklets that are already printed of all the trail maps at City Hall. And most of the trailhead locations will have a kiosk with a map. So if you have a phone with a camera, you can take a picture of that so that you have it with you before you start your hike. So to navigate the website and find the maps, first you'll head to concordnh.gov/trails. And in the top part here, we'll have events. So any community hikes we'll post there. And then right below that, we have trail announcements. So that's updated seasonally. So for hunting and mud season, and if we have to reroute a trail or close a trail for any reason, this is where you would find that information. If you scroll down past that, It'll bring you to the list of all of the trail names. And these are all clickable links that will bring you to a PDF map of the trail and will include a description of what to expect at the trail, of how long it is. So we will go on to Windup Park, which is number 21. So it'll open up to this window, and right under trail access here, you can see PDF map, and that's where you'll click to get the Windup Park map. And then right below that, it tells you how to get to the parking location on Fisk Road, the travel time, and a bit of information on history and sort of what to expect for terrain. All right, so now we'll take a tour through Windup Trails. This is, again, the map of all of Concord's trails, and there in the yellow is Windup Park. So as you can see, there are multiple routes you can take. Right here is the parking lot on Fisk Road. If you were to walk all the trails in this park, it would total just over 2.5 miles. As we mentioned earlier with the blazing on the trees, the colors here of the individual trails will correspond to the color that you see in blazing. All right, so the Windup Park Trailhead is on Fisk Road, and this one is fancier than most of the trailheads. This was donated along with the 85-acre plot of land from the Winant family in 2009. So Rivington Winant and his wife, Joan, donated this park to the city in honor of his father, John Winant, who served as a New Hampshire governor and also was a teacher at the St. Paul's School.
Oh, you missed an important thing.
The conservation of Windup Park is a collaborative effort between the Winant family that gifted the land, the city, St. Paul's School, which is across the street, and the Five Rivers Conservation Trust. From the peak here, you can see the mountain range, vista, and views of the St. Paul's School campus where he worked. On the eastern side of the peak, it opens up to a view of the Capitol Dome of the State House, where John Winant served as governor. Right. So throughout this trail, there are interpretive signs identifying different species of trees and areas in the landscape. Up towards the peak, there is an old growth white oak tree that is about 200 years old, and you can tell really stands out amongst the other trees on the landscape in the form of its low branching, like this picture shows. You're likely to see lots of signs of wildlife at this park and along all the other trails in Concord. Now that it's spring, we're starting to see amphibians come out to visit the vernal pools. And as always, birds, woodpeckers, and small critters. Trails do have an impact on wildlife, which is another important reason to stay on the marked trail so we can keep our impact to a minimum while we're out. This park in particular also has a really great diversity of wildflowers and plants throughout the seasons. As you're walking up to the peak, you may notice these old wheel rims that are high up in the trees. And you might wonder why they are out there in the middle of the forest. So these are the remains of an old rope ski tow from this 1960s that the St. Paul's ski team would use for practice. So there's these along with other signs in the landscape, like the old growth tree that you can find along the trail that tells us during this time in the 1960s, at least, that this wasn't a forested landscape, but was open. All right. And this is the entrance that you can access Windup Park from behind the UU Church. This entrance has more even and gentle terrain, as you can see in this photo. And the UU Church is actually the original location of the Winant family home. This is the entrance from Fisk Road. So you can see that that's a bit more challenging terrain, rockier, steeper sections. So this is an example of why it's important to have sturdy footwear when you head out. All right, now we are going to head over to Contoocook River Park trails. These are located more northernly towards Pennacook on Electric Ave. So as with Windup Park, there are multiple routes you can take at Contoocook River, totaling about 2 miles if you were to walk all of them. This park is generally flat for the most part. All of the loops there, it's relatively flat ground. And so shortly after the parking lot here, if you walk straight just a short way and then take a right onto the yellow trail, you'll start walking along the Contoocook River, where you'll get some really beautiful views. And continuing down the yellow trail will bring you to a dam where you can watch the waterfall. So what seems to be just a trail through the forest actually used to be the site of the exciting Contoocook River Amusement Park. This park operated from the late 1800s through 1920. And for just 20 cents, you could take a trolley ride from downtown Concord and come to the park to go swimming, dancing, skating, and they even had this steamboat ride you could take up the Contoocook. This spot is along the yellow trail that overlooks the rapids from high above. The lower image here shows the platform when the park was operating, and the top is what it is today. This image shows what the old recreation building used to look like. They would put boats in over there, and today it's just forested. There's no building remaining. All right, we're heading to Batchelder Mill Trails. These are in East Concord. And again, this trail system has a lot of loops you can take within the trails with multiple parking access. If you walked all of these trails, it would be about 2.5 miles, just about. So these trails are located within Concord's historic mill district from the mid 1700s to the late 1800s. There are many mills in this area of town, including a brick mill that you can see some remnants of along the trail. And this is also the site of what was thought to be the first dam in Concord that helped to power the mills. Excuse me, sorry. All right, sorry about that. There are interpretive signs throughout the Batchelder Mill Trails that were created in collaboration with AARP. They want to encourage more folks to get out and enjoy the trails, so they provide some history and context to what we're seeing out on the trails. Next up is Riley Trails, located near the border of Loudoun. All right, there is a parking lot for Riley Trails located just after the marsh if you're heading from Mountain Road area. And there are 2 loops to choose from here, the Hoyt Marsh Trail Loop, and on this side of the road, the old Snaptown Road Trail. Both of these are relatively gentle, flat walks. The Snaptown Road Trail has some gentle incline, but it's just under 1.5 miles if you were to do both of them. So this trail also has a wide range of plants and wildlife that you can find in a marshy habitat, which much different than the pine forest at Winans. So similar to Batchelder Mills, AARP worked with the city again here at the Riley Trails to provide a series of interpretive stops that detail interesting things in the landscape. So this one here, this giant boulder we're looking at, that is a glacial erratic, which the sign here describes. So during the last ice age, as the glacier melted and receded, it carried these large boulders and deposited them across the landscape. And there are a lot of interesting stops along this trail, like this up here is a stone wall, which you're likely to find on many trails throughout New England, which tell you a bit of its history. The Snaptown Road Trail is just across the street from the parking lot, and it goes up some gentle hills and meandering trails down back to the marsh.
Mel, I do have a question in the chat.
Okay.
Someone is asking about dogs on the trails, and they wanted to know if you had mentioned that they were allowed on all the trails except the Audubon Trail.
Yes, that is correct. All dogs are welcome on the trails. If they're well behaved, they can be off leash, but otherwise should be on leash at all times.
Thank you.
All right, the Riley Trails also have this viewing platform along the marsh where you can sit and have lunch and take in the landscape. It's a short walk from the parking lot, so you don't need to walk the entire trail system in order to get to the platform. And from here, you're likely to see wildlife, especially during the bird migration seasons. This is a view of the marsh on a sunny summer day. I wish it had audio with it because it's a very peaceful, relaxing spot to be in the afternoon. So the Hoyt Marsh and the adjacent upland forests, they're managed by New Hampshire Fish and Game as a wildlife management area, specifically for maintaining waterfowl habitat. So you're likely to see many different types of birds here, from mallards, herons, mergansers, kingfishers, and other wildlife like moose, deer, and otter from the platform, and beaver. All right, we're up to Morono Park. This is the last stop on the little trail tour. This trail is located just past Beaver Meadow School on 2nd Street. There is a parking lot for the trail just before you reach the train tracks near the Swills Falls parking lot. So the main trail is blazed in red with a few short loops branching off of it. And unlike the other trails that we've covered, Morono Park, you'll walk straight to the end and go back the way that you came in. So round trip is just about 2 miles. The entrance to the trail is just across from the parking area. And this trail is also part of a larger network of the New Hampshire Heritage Trails that run along the north-south route along the the former Boston Main Railroad corridor. So Morono Park differs from other city trails in that it's wider and it's made out of a gravel path, which creates more of an open environment rather than being set in like a densely forested landscape. So this makes it a really nice trail for biking or walking in groups or in the winter, snowshoeing and cross-country skiing. It's mostly flat the entire way, except this little area is just a gentle incline up a very small hill. So the trail skirts the edge of the West Concord River Oxbow Pond. And where there is water, there is life. So you may see heron here, beaver, ducks, and people have also seen otters. All right, so that concludes the trail tour. We're very excited to be bringing back the monthly guided hikes done by our trails subcommittee volunteers. We'll be updating the website monthly when we decide on dates. So check back on our webpage if you're interested in joining a group out on the trails. And if you have any questions, we're happy to take them now, or if you think of them later, you can email Beth or I with your questions and we'll follow up.
I do have a couple of questions in the chat.
Okay.
One person wants to know where the Batchelder Trail is.
Yes, the Batchelder Mills Trail, that is, so there's a few different entrances on that. It's in East Concord, there's an entrance on Shawmut Street, North Curtisville Road, and South Curtisville. So it's just past the exit 16 traffic circle there.
Great. And okay, there is a person who wants to know, excuse me, they would like you to restate the trails where there is no hunting during hunting season.
Oh yeah, let me go back to that slide.
And while Mel does that, we do update in August the trails webpage that she gave. We'll list those again. So if you lose your list, you can go back in August right before hunting season starts to get this list.
Oh. Thank you.
Is there any other questions?
From anyone? Yeah.
Okay, there's one more. No, I don't really see any more questions in the chat now. Everyone is thanking you for a great presentation.
Yes, we want to thank Beth and Mel for sharing their time and expertise with all of us tonight. It's been great. And thank you so much to the audience for joining us tonight. I hope you enjoyed learning about the Concord Trail System and that the information and resources will be helpful to you. And please be sure to check the AARP New Hampshire website often. That's aarp.org/New Hampshire for more online programs coming soon, including coffee and conversation, gentle yoga, and some live cooking demonstrations. So be well and take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Night,
Mel.
thank
and
you,
Beth.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.